Hello. Hi. My name is Lamine, and welcome to my channel, Lamine the Ad Guy, where we talk about advertising and marketing. Did I say marketing? I mean marketing. Tomato, tomato. And we have a special episode today. We're actually going to do a little review on a critically acclaimed, award-winning show. It's called Mad Men. Oh yeah. I am super excited to kind of talk about this show because it deals with a lot of the business aspect of advertising. And today we're reviewing the first episode, the pilot episode of the series. Yes, indeed. And yes, I've watched the show, I've watched the series in its full capacity a while ago. But now that I have this channel, I feel like this could be a great way to kind of express myself and nerd out on Mad Men. Funny story how I got into watching it. At first I wasn't a big fan of the series. I knew of it, but I never had the urge to watch it until like one of my friends said to me, "Hey, have you seen the TV show Mad Men?" And I was like, "What? Who cares? I don't want to hear about, no offense, white men talking about, stuff. It's not really my thing." And she said, "I think you would like it, especially your vibe and, you like in advertising and stuff like that." So I watched it and it was amazing. I'm not going to say that every step of the way was great. There was some cringe worthy moments and some awkward moments for me, but overall I am pretty satisfied with how I interpreted Mad Men, especially someone who loves advertising. So Matthew Weiner, paying homage to the early stages of advertising and in the industrialized era. It's kind of cool. Advertising has been around forever, right? But it really started getting popular with print and radio and television all being circulated at one time. Communication became faster, and in parts of America that would take forever to reach. People could send instant messaging through radio and television and even nowadays through print. So it was really good to see the rise of broadcasting and like airing live events. I am proud that I had the opportunity to well, I never had the opportunity. I was never born around that time, but to learn about it. And I am an advertising aficionado. I love everything about it, so of course it makes sense for me to at least review the first episode of Mad Men to the audience that might also find this stuff intriguing. There's some good stuff in this show, in this episode, and I'm super excited to go through a rundown and also give my opinions and ask questions along the way. There might be a couple of areas where you probably thought the same way, especially from a marketing and advertising point of view. I am not going to analyze in depth every character and how they act and their childhood. I'm really going to be objective especially during this time, because for me, I feel like if I was in this predicament, I it would have been a different situation. Now, if I had the opportunity to work at an agency in the '60s, and it ain't Putney Swoop, it would be different. However, I'm going to be objective, and I'm going to try to get through this just from an advertising and marketing standpoint. I'm not going to lie. People in the late 50s and early 60s paved the way for an ad man like me in current times. So, yes, I do advertising differently than those back then, but the intention is still there, and I hope that it continues to afterwards. All right, so we have an intro. Oh yeah, don't forget to like and comment under this video. Might as well. And subscribe to this channel. Let me know if you like this video. Should I make more reviews, more discussions and podcast-esque videos? Does that grind your gears? I don't know. All right, so we're gonna get started on this episode. This is Mad Men episode 1. No, season 1, episode 1. And I'm super excited. So we open up with a black screen and a white type font, and it shows the words that spell out Mad Men. And then there's a definition of what Mad Men meant back in the day. And it was kind of cool because, a lot of advertising does deal with copy and ad copy, and I felt like that was just really cool to start the show off and give us a definition, because not a lot of people would understand what a madman was. A madman, singular, madmen, plural. The definition is a term coined in the late 1950s to describe the advertising executives of Madison Avenue. Yes, Madison Avenue. That's such an interesting take, because back in the day, I consider Madison Avenue to be the focal point or centerpiece of advertising in America. It was a bustling time, and for that strip to be considered the advertising mecca, where a lot of individuals from around the country would come to New York and do business in regards to advertising, is impressive. Nowadays you can just jump on a phone chat or a video chat, or I know people that still go into office and make deals happen, but Madison Avenue was that place. I've read a lot of books on the past. I can't speak from experience because I've never been to Madison Avenue, but it seems to be a part of advertising history in America. And these were the creme de la creme, the premium advertising executives who made this a career. And it was a small place in history. I actually read the book that sort of inspired the series. Matthew Weiner, the creator of Mad Men, I think was inspired by a book that I read, and I might do a little review on the book too, because it's pretty good. It deals with a lot of what was going on during that time. Very catchy, very very simple and straight to the point. So, but back to Madison Avenue, it's it was definitely where you wanted to be when it comes to advertising. And I think during that time, it was right after the war, industrialization and mass production was definitely on the rise. Technology was on the rise. Mass media, mass communication was on the rise. So it was definitely a time where advertising became a serious career choice. A lot of what I think of the olden days was farmers, agriculture, and there was manufacturing, but now there is a space for communication and communication at a high level, and it was helping businesses reach out to individuals that might not have known about a product or a brand and giving them an opportunity to pitch a sale, salesmanship as well. And it's very I think it was very lucrative and strategic, and for Mad Men to be a show is kind of cool to depict that. So we open up with the type font Mad Men in the description, and then we go down to the actual show where it takes place. And I think it starts off at a bar. It's late at night, late at night during the week. It's a weekday, and there are people smoking and drinking at the bar, and there's a close-up of the main character, Donald Draper, and he's scribbling on a piece of napkin. Who needs a notebook when you just have a piece of napkin that he probably got from the bar, and he's scribbling some notes down, and is interrupted by one of the servers, I think. And Donald Draper mentions that the guy has like a pack of cigarettes on him, and ask him what he smokes, and he said he smokes this certain brand. The brand's name is Old Gold. Old Gold, that's what he smokes. Oh yeah. And Donald Draper smokes Lucky Strikes. And he starts to ask the guy numerous questions on why he smokes Old Gold versus Lucky Strikes. And it's sort of cool to see Donald Draper in this role. He's having a mini focus group for Lucky Strike. Specifically for individuals who don't smoke Lucky Strike. How do you understand brand loyalty? It seems like he asked very specific questions of how he would change, or what would have to happen for him to change his brand of cigarettes. And the guy says, I don't know, I've been smoking these for a long time, and I like them, but if they were to miraculously stop selling them, I would have to change because I like smoking. So it's interesting because it's not the cigarettes that he likes. He loves the cigarettes, of course. He loves the brand. He's very familiar with the brand. It's what he's been smoking forever. But he loves smoking and would change brands if it meant continuing smoking. And one thing that I have in my notes is the quote, "I love smoking." It's interesting. It's very informal type of focused group discussion. One thing that I like about this scene, and I hope that everyone watching or listening kind of understands, that how can I say this? It's interesting that he decides to talk to the server versus everyone else at the bar. Mind you, the server is African American descent, black. Shout out to the blacks. And he decides to talk to him versus one of the patrons at the bar. And there's a lot of white individuals at the bar, of course. So it's sort of interesting the people he decides to talk to about smoking a cig. It makes me feel like he understands that everyone smokes cigs, not just the upper echelon of people in the world. It makes me feel like he understands like the target audience of it all, and he's trying to figure out ways to reach out to them. I like this also. I like this scene also because it shows that Donald Draper is always working. It doesn't matter what time of the day it is. He might be at a bar and he's scribbling notes. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see him in a more relaxed point of view in working. He's a very stoic individual, I would say, and a loner. No one's with him at the bar. He's by himself. And it might have been like a happy hour maybe, or after hours. Definitely past happy hour. It's kind of cool. One thing that the server says that I want to mention as well is the quote, "Ladies love magazines." It's interesting that he says that. One thing that's going on during this interaction is that the server mentions that his wife said that smoking long term is going to kill you. It's going to kill you, honey. Honey, you going to die from those cigarettes if you keep smoking them like that. And he mentions a publication at that time, Reader's Digest. So it's interesting that they introduced Reader's Digest as a publication, which is a popular publication in the print medium. So shout outs to them. It's probably an article. It looks like it's more of public relations more than anything. I don't think it was an ad that Reader's Digest wrote. I think it's just an article that someone read in public relations. That's what it was. It seems like cigarettes is getting a bad rap. But we'll get back to that. The scene passes. They go to another scene. Don ends up going to this girl's place who we don't know at this time. He knocks on the door. Obviously, she lets him in. One thing about Don is that he's very well put. He's well put. It doesn't matter time of day. It can be at 9 o'clock. He always looks put together. I don't know how many hours he spent in front of a mirror, but in public, the man looks great. But I digress. He gets into the woman's apartment and they start talking. It's interesting. Don is still working. Seems very anxious, very unsettled with a certain topic in his head, and it's with cigarettes. Lucky Strike. You learn that Don is an account executive, a senior account executive at an advertising agency, and he pretty much works to keep the advertising agency afloat, in some kind of capacity. He seems very worried, and it seems like there is a meeting tomorrow with the executives. And the issue is messaging, which is an area that has fallen short for a while. Apparently, Reader's Digest publication, very good with public relations, mentioned that cigarettes are bad for you, and that also the government, FTC, have started cracking down on false claims of advertising. And so the government is actually gunning for advertisers who promote false claims. And so now a lot of cigarette individuals or cigarette companies are worried that their advertising is going to get them fined out the woo-ha. And he's in a dilemma now because it seems like all of his messaging was to downplay how bad cigarettes are for you. And I want to, full disclosure, I want to mention that I do not condone anything that's happening in the 1960s. That it's just not my time. So we're not going to talk about like my stance on any of that stuff right now. We're going to be very objective when it comes to the situation. I was not a thing back then. Anywho, it seems that he has a important meeting tomorrow and he doesn't know what to do. And it seems as though that he's in a predicament and he's talking to this girl trying to grab some ideas. It seems like he is everywhere he's trying to grab some ideas to help with the meeting. And she seems like a normal individual. She has her own apartment, so she's independent. Back in that day, I don't know how that felt for a woman to be independent in the city, have her own apartment. But she seems to be also in the communication business as well, but for postcards or celebratory cards. What do you call those? I just call them cards. What do you call the cards you get at the, CVS or department stores where you have, celebrations on them, like Happy Mother's Day, like things like that? Are they just called celebratory cards? Someone let me know what that is. Anywho, he has romantic relations with this girl, and it fast forward to the next day. They talk about it a little bit more. He still seems anxious about it. I'm starting to think that this account or meeting is very vital for him. It seems as though that it is a big part of his job because he is working after hours to figure out the solution to a problem. Fast forward, you get a little bit of what's going on. I want to mention that I took a note of the atmosphere of New York in the 1960s, late 50s, 1960s. I actually know the date of where this period piece is in, and it's very subtle because you would think that it's the 50s, but it's actually the early 60s, March 1960. I know that because of a scene later in the episode, but I digress. So I really like that they depicted the bustling life of that time in New York. Even back then, New York has always been a city of go-getters. Everyone is working. I also appreciate them trying to show a workforce, the working person of that era. It's so interesting. You know, I feel like back in the day, to say that you're going to go into the city and work was a little bit taboo. You know, why not stay at home and start a family? Instead of going into the city and not knowing who is around and going, into these buildings. But it shows Madison Avenue and you see all these skyscrapers, towers, high rises, just in the sky. I believe, yes, industrialization. Yes, to the people. All these people just working. Living just in, y'all know that Stevie Wonder song? Just enough for the city. I appreciate that. It gives me a sense of ambition. And that's something that I can always relate to, especially in this time for me. So you see a new group of characters, mostly mid-level executives, and this new girl named Peggy Olson, and Ken Cosgrove, and I forgot the other people's names. But they're all going to the top floor, or somewhat in the top floor. It's kind of interesting to see where they're going, but they're going to the agency. Sterling Cooper agency. We're finally here. I have in my notes, finally, The Office. Finally, The Office. I'm super happy that they ended up showing office life in that time, because to me it was so new, and you can see that they were super organized and ready to go. Everyone was ready every day to start making something happen. Work life. Yeah, you gotta appreciate that in a way. Pete has his own office. I have that in my notes. Yeah, so you get a glance of Pete Campbell. Personally, in this episode, I didn't really like Pete that much. He was a little bit despicable to me. The way he maneuvered through this day. He was getting married that weekend, so I'm guessing it was a Friday or something like that. And he really showed his butt. He showed his butt. Not literally, figuratively. But Pete has this confidence that I can truly relate to. He's very ambitious, and I can tell that he's the guy in charge of his group of people. He's not the head honcho at all, but he's like a mid-level executive, and I feel like he's the best of the mid-level executives, and all the mid-level executives see him as the leader, but he is still very weak to the senior executives because he's not a senior, but he wants to be there. I think he's at this plateau. No, he's not at this plateau. He's just getting started. Anyway, Pete, he has his moment. He has his office. He's a big deal. Like a mid-level executive has an office. Good for him. One thing that I like about this show, it's a pilot season, is that they started showing characters, and one of the characters that stood out is Joan. I don't know her position. Is she like head of office? What do they call? Office manager, maybe? If anyone knows Joan's actual position, let me know. And like I mentioned, there's a new girl, Peggy, who's on the scene. And I love the dynamic between Peggy and Joan. It's so mother goose, mother hen helping the new one in. It's so cool. And one thing that I like about this scene is how Joan communicates and expressed business politics and the office politics of how the office is ran and how all these people work together to make things happen. And she goes through like the secretaries and the receptionists and the account executives and the creatives. Does she go through the creatives? She just gives a walkthrough of the office, and it's so cool. And you can tell that Peggy's so overwhelmed by it all. She's in awe by it, but Joan really tries to keep it grounded. She gives her some wisdom and shows her that, hey, it is a deep dive, but you'll be fine and understand what's going on to continue to grow. You can tell that Joan understands the system and she uses that to her advantage. She doesn't want to be a weak person in the system. She goes for it. I can appreciate that. Her skill set might be limited. Well, let me not say that. She might have a vast skill set, but they don't give her a lot of responsibilities. But within the responsibilities that she has, she strives, and that's admirable. She knows her role, and she's trying to show Peggy the ropes, and I like that. I like that. So one thing that I also wanted to emphasize in this whole office showing is the technology that they use to make the office run, which is a typewriter. And it's so interesting to me that the typewriter was, a big deal back in the late 50s, 60s. But it became a mass production type of product, and every office had one. Typing was definitely starting to be, it was going in that trajectory now. Nowadays, you can just text on your phone or send an email. Who needs to write a typewriter? You could just tell that back in the day, your writing had to be perfect because most of the time you had one chance. Well, that's not true, but if you ran out of paper, you couldn't just press delete. Once you press that button, it was on the paper. And it's so funny how they are in awe with this product, the typewriter. It's so cool to know how technology has evolved over a period of time. And it's interesting to see that technology was very prominent in office spaces, especially in agency office spaces, because most of advertising back in the day was ad copy. A copywriter, it's huge being able to write good ads. So having that technology at such a vast volume, a large volume, it's huge. All right, so they show the office, and Peggy's starting to get situated, and she's at her desk, and she's a secretary, and her guy or person she is working for is actually Donald Draper. Woohoo! So it's kind of like, oh, great lead-in. She's working for the head honcho himself, and that's cool. That's awesome, Peggy. In a secretary world, to me, if you're back in the day, if you're working for a senior executive, you probably have a more likely chance to have a long-term job. except if the junior executive, continues to work there. But in regards to just employment, you want to have someone senior, right? What would you all say? Strategy wise. Anyway, Peggy's getting situated, and Don finally comes into the office. He's followed by a new character, Roger Sterling, and oh snap, his name is on the wall. So Roger Sterling's a big deal. He's very cool, calm, and collective in front of everyone. Like both of them, they don't really make a scene. They're very known, and they have work to do. It's funny. They're not the first person to come in, but they are very direct in their entrance. And does that make sense? They're very direct in their entrance. They're, for some reason, that's what I mean. Oh, maybe they're very matter of fact in their entrance. How about that? They're very matter of fact. Going to work, going to get the day started. No time for water cooler talk at the water cooler. Anyway, Don walks into his office. I don't even think he notices Peggy at all. And Roger follows in. And I like this scene. Well, I'll pause that thought and talk more about the actual scene. So they go in, and we all know Don is nervous or anxious about this meeting that he has today. And it seems like Roger is just reminding him, like, hey, we have that meeting today. Do you know what you're going to say? So I'm guessing that Roger is the account executive and Don is the creative director for this specific account. I kind of like the scene because it's Roger following Don to make sure that he's okay, that he has everything ready for the account. Roger comes across as someone who's very laid back, but he understands the job in regards to advertising, and he's making sure that the creative director or copywriter or senior, whatever you want to call him at this time, is understanding the gratitude of the meeting and just making sure that, is it gratitude? No, gravity of the meeting, and making sure that everything's ready for the actual time. He also mentions that they have another meeting today of a new client who is shopping around trying to figure out, well, I wouldn't call him a new client yet, just an interested or potential client who's shopping around looking for an account, looking for an agency to help with their account. And they make some really snide and nasty comments. Very, I would say, under the belt comments, and I'm not gonna get into that. That's them. I'm being very objective, just mentioning the advertising. Roger leaves. Don is finally in working mode. We finally get to see him on the clock. When everyone's going crazy outside, it's very quiet in his office. It's the subtleness of it all, that he is away from the madness outside of his office. It's kind of cool to see the shift in energy. And it seems like a lot of his office talk is one-on-one or very personal. A new character comes in, Salvatore, and he is the art director for this account. And you kind of get to see a relationship between the art director and the copywriter and the account executive. It's kind of cool, to see all of them trying to make advertising a thing. It's so interesting, and the copywriter brings some illustrations that he had, you know, that was a little bit tongue in cheek, if you know what I mean. And it's so cool to see that. You know, I personally love depictions of like copywriters and art directors and account executives mingling and connecting and having this moment together and working together for advertising. Is so awesome to see, and it's interesting. So they have a moment. Don is still not convinced. You know, Don is still on the search for messaging, and everyone is talking to him, and he's just not satisfied with anything, and he just seems like on edge. Another individual walks in. It seems like an early meeting that he has, and it's a research marketer. It's a lady. It's a lady. And that's so cool. I'm happy that they had a lady as a research marketer. Good on her. That must have been tough, lady. And she is here to give them results on a couple of focus groups that she ran about cigarettes and Reader's Digest and the FTC and how people feel about them, especially with the advertising and yada, yada, yada. And she kind of gives the general consensus of how people feel or about cigarettes right now. And Don takes that in and then throws it away. He takes in that information. He's like, I don't need this. You're trying to generalize us as something that we're not. I'm emphasizing it a little bit. I'm exaggerating a little bit. And he's like, we're talking about Lucky Strike, which is their account. And she's like, I did my job. It's very, I did my job. I did what you wanted me to do. This is what people think. Take this information. And she kind of walks away. She walks away. One thing that I have in my notes is that Dawn's office is gorgeous and manicured. It's very put together, very clean, nice, great design. Makes me feel like I should step up a little bit. But good on him. All right. So Dawn takes a little nap. He wakes up. Peggy wakes him up, and he's finally introduced to Peggy. They have a conversation, and she's telling him that Pete Campbell, the guy I talked about earlier, Pete Campbell was coming. And for some reason, Don's a little rattled by that. He asks Peggy if he knows that he's sleeping. He asks Peggy if he knows that he's sleeping. And she says no. And he just feels like, I feel like with Pete, Don has to be like Pete makes Don Draper young in the sense of this ambitious guy wants what I have, and I need to show him that I'm still here, so you can't take it. And there's this little intimidation. I don't think he's intimidated by Pete, but I do think he's a little threatened by Pete being here. If that makes sense. Like, I don't think at the end of the day Pete wins, but I do think that Pete has a power around him that is undeniable, and Don has to deal with that. Like, he has to maneuver that type of energy. Don asks how old Pete is, and he says he's 26, mid-level executive, and it's kind of cool because I'm at that age too. So it's so awesome to, be in the same realm as Pete Campbell. In regards to just our jobs, we all work in Pete. We all there, man. So we're all trying, man. Pete has like a little snide comment with Peggy in the room. Peggy's there, Don's there. They're all in the office, and Pete says some rude things as usual. This is not Pete's favorite episode. I like Pete as a character moving forward. I mean, later in the series. Right now, Pete is very despicable, and I'm not trying to be a guy that like just bandwagons off like the good guys. I'm not always like that. But I do try to put myself in situations where I try to put myself in situations as if like, wow, am I reacting too harsh? Am I just going with etiquette, social etiquette? But Pete was just out of line. He's very like there was a time, because this is office politics, and Pete has a little bit of power in the office, and Peggy's very new, and he says a couple of comments, and Peggy tries to like stop it, ignore it, and he just keeps bashing her a little bit more. It's like, Pete, come on. They're walking. Pete continues to say some very out of line, off color comments, and Don kind of scolds him a little bit, gives him some advertising wisdom of how to act within the advertising world. It seems like this is a great way, someone showing you their experience, and Don is very experienced apparently in this role, and he's pretty much telling him that like this is a small world, and so you can't really blow it on some scandal, especially in the office. And then I have some notes. I said I hate Roger so much. Why do I hate Roger? Oh yeah, because he's very like stereotypical, very old head stereotypical guy. He pulls in. Okay, so it seems like Pete is here to get Don into a meeting, and he pulls. They're going to this meeting, which I mentioned earlier that Roger set up for a potential client, and it seems that the potential client is a department store. Don and Pete have their intentions to come in and pretty much sweet talk this client to staying with them. I mean, not staying with them, to joining their agency. And they go in. Roger fails to mention that the actual client is a woman, and Don thinks that it's a man, and he's a little taken aback that this businesswoman is in the room. Not that it wasn't a thing, it's just very unusual. And it's interesting how they set up this meeting. They have shrimp cocktails all over the place and Bloody Marys all over the place. It's very informal, but formal at the same time. It seems like they're just talking. They have Bloody Marys at a meeting. I don't know what to say. I've never been to a situation like that. I've been at lunch meetings though. When I worked at a traditional agency a few years back, we had meetings at restaurants, and we ate food and we talked about it a little bit, and they would condone business that way. So that's so interesting. I love that they show meetings in the show, because relationships and meetings are such a big part of the business, especially for new clients and new business. So I appreciate that. It's fun to see the dynamic of it all. And has anyone ever had shrimp cocktails and Bloody Marys at their meeting? Let me know. It's kind of cool though to see to be a fly on a wall during this meeting time and seeing how business was conducted. Anyways, we're at this meeting. You have Pete, you have Roger, you have Don, you have this random dude here, and you have Rachel Mencken, who is the new potential client that they're trying to work in. And she has a department store on a very bustling street where people are coming and buying, and her next door neighbor to her store is Chanel. So it's this place where consumers come all the time to do business and buy fashionable things, and they're trying to figure out a way to get more people through the door. They've had their lowest sales year ever, and that's intense. It's like, wow, your lowest sales year ever? What are y'all doing over there? You mean even your first year? And so they're looking for new ways to get people through the door. And Roger and Dawn and even Pete try to get her, try to pitch a coupon strategy to her, and that they have reach on these specific networks that would love, that they feel like they, specific media networks that they feel like the coupon would do well. And you can tell that she's done her research and she's been looking at advertising agencies for a bit, because she's mentioned that a lot of her competitors have mentioned that. I mean, a lot of other people have mentioned coupons, and she's not 100% sold on that. She's very savvy, and I like that. She wants the brand to feel expensive, and she doesn't want people to come to the brand because of the cheapness of it all. And everyone's floored that she has an opinion. Everyone's floored in that room. Well, the person that's mostly floored is Don Draper, and I think he was just taken offhand, and Pete Campbell too. They just don't understand that this lady feels as though she understands marketing better than they do. And they're a little intimidated that they're pitching to her. And Pete Campbell asks a question about why did she want to do business with them instead of a Jewish agency, because there were Jewish agencies at that time. And she kind of understands what he's saying. He said, why am I doing agencies with you? I mean, why am I trying to be in business with you and not them? And she kind of makes the sense to me personally that she wants to reach out to people who have, money. And I feel like to her, she has the connects in the Jewish community. She understands what's going on there, but she wants to reach out and expand her reach. Did I say that twice? Reach out and expand her reach. She wants to expand her reach outside of that community, and that's an interesting marketing, perspective. And she feels as though that the agency could have potential to help with that. Pete Campbell makes another a weird comment, and I have in my notes that the agency caters to white audiences, white families, white consumers, and consumers, communication outlets. You got to understand, back in the day, Reader's Digest was for for the public of white individuals. The television shows were for white individuals. It was catered to them. Like, it was content for them. And her coming to this agency and asking to place ads, a Jewish store ad in these white spaces was confusing to them. And she was very strong in her position because she feels like there is a market for white individuals who would appreciate her stuff or her father's department store. It's interesting. I mean, Jewish family could somewhat pass as Caucasian individuals in the country. So it's definitely an interesting take of what she was trying to do, but none of the people in that room were buying it. They just felt it wouldn't make sense. They wanted to feel as though that, get a coupon. You want to build sales, get a coupon. Tell people that you're selling it at this price, and it's to make it feel cheap. And, or affordable, I don't know. Sales marketing tactics are good sometimes, but at some point, people just start waiting for the promotions and not the actual product. They start waiting when it's affordable again versus just buying it because they want it and because it's great. And so, like, there's this dynamic of it all. And, that's something we can talk about in another video. I can't wait to, talk about things on this channel that hopefully people like to talk about. All right, so we're back in this meeting. Dawn is very offended by her opinions, and he walks out. Pete Campbell follows her. Roger's left trying to pull it back to pieces. It seems like Rachel is very poised to me. It seems like this is what she goes through every time she opens her mouth in these meetings. And she's used to it. She is a little defensive, but I feel as though that she understands that this was going to happen, especially when she voices her opinion and everyone's just like, what is going on here? What? I want to understand. I want people to, I'm going to ask the question, what do you all think about Rachel Menken in this scene? Do you think she holds her own? Do you think she's out of line? Do you think that during this time, she held all the cards, and so she was just trying to find the best? Do you think that she should listen to the professionals about coupon versus just a different marketing strategy? Let me know in the comment section. All right. I think I skipped some parts. No, I didn't. All right, so now we go to the main event. Dum, dum, dum. Which is the meeting with Lucky Strike. And it seems to me that this meeting is very important. It seems to me like this is a big account. They're all white men in this room. Pete Campbell's at this meeting. Pete is I understand why he has the office now, because he's here. He's at these meetings. And so am I. Well, and now, and also when I'm watching the television show, I'm at those meetings too. Anyway, Don's there, Roger's there, and a bunch of execs, and it seems like the CEO or the boss, head honcho of Lucky Strike is there, and he has his henchmen and the people, the yes men's, and the people that the marketing guy and everyone there. And he's sort of, I also like, before I even go into the whole conversation, it's a different type of environment now. Everyone's smoking cigarettes. There's no food on the table. There's water, and there's just a bunch of cigarettes. No cocktails, no Bloody Marys. This is business too. It's very, it's very in your face, bold. There's a problem here, and they need the advertising agency to fix it. It seems to me that when a person, or the boss CEO, comes out of his realm to come visit the agency, it's either good news or bad news. It's either like, why am I paying you again? And the guy has a southern accent, so he's from the South, and you can tell he traveled all the way to New York, and he's like, why are you getting paid again? They're finding people out the woo-ha here. He mentioned that one of his competitors called him and said that the FTC is bashing them with fines, and because of their advertising. And it sucks because that means like a lot of cigarette companies are probably backing out of advertising. They're like, I don't want to be here if I'm going to get fined. But at the same time, they understand the value of advertising in mass media. And he's like, what's going on? And Roger tries to, sugarcoat the situation. He's like, yeah, the FTC and everyone's starting to crack down on, media manipulation. And the guy says, media manipulation? That's why I pay you. The whole conversation is like, what's going on? Don's in the corner. Like, this is Don's job. This is what he does. Don's like freaking out, and he has no solution right now. And they talk about what's going on with regulations and claims and Reader's Digest again. Reader's Digest definitely impacted cigarettes buying and advertising. And it seems like a lot of people thought that it was safe and that doctors were smoking cigarettes, but in reality, it's not good. It leads to a lot of diseases, and allegedly, I'm gonna say that. At this point, it does, but allegedly, I don't know. What should I say? I'm just gonna say allegedly to be safe. And it seems to me that there is an issue with messaging. They need to figure that out. They don't know how to utilize advertising anymore. They're trying to figure out how to still reach out to people and not get fined and not talk about cigarettes killing them. And Pete Campbell steps up because Don doesn't know what to say. And these executives of Lucky Strike are looking at the account agencies the advertising agency like, hello, how are you going to help us? And Pete steps up because, Pete is very ambitious. He actually ends up using like the research marketing that the lady that met up with Don had. And he starts just talking about that, word for word pretty much. And he has a mini pitch from that because Pete is always ready. Pete is always plan B, plan C. He's gonna, I feel like even if he's like wrong, he's still gonna be confident in his wrongness. It falls flat with the client. He's actually insulted. He believes that his product is good. It's been around for generations and generations. His grandfather smoked it, his father smoked it, his kids smoke it. He believes Native Americans. I say Native Indians. I apologize. It's been a long podcast, guys. He believes that the Native Americans gave it to him. It's reckless. It's I don't know. It's so delusional. No offense. I'm just gonna voice my opinion on this. The guy is so delusional. He definitely, when I think of tobacco, when I think of the early 1900s, even through the 60s, I just think of a bad time of a lot of slaves having to and laborers having to manage a lot of those tobacco farms. Anywho, they're insulted by Pete's pitch. They think it's dumb. They don't want people to believe that their cigarettes are a death wish. They don't want to fall into that trap. And it seems as if that the problem that they had wasn't solved. They're walking out very disappointed. And then Don jumps up in his seat. He has the idea from what one of the clients is Yes Men said. I think the Yes Man was his son. And he kind of plays off that idea that they can talk about anything. It seems as though that instead of falling into the trap of what a lot of the main competitors are talking about, which is to appease to these mass media outlets and publications of cigarettes and how bad it is, he decides to go another route and just talk about Lucky Strike. And he asked the client how Lucky Strike is made, and he said it's in the North Carolina sun. And I was like, the South, of course, is in the South. He said it's made in North Carolina sunshine. It's toasted. And Don takes that and was like, it's toasted. Perfect. And they ask, and everyone's a little confused. Well, the clients are a little confused. And he was like, yeah, but everybody toasts their tobacco. And he was like, no, everybody's tobacco is poisonous. Yours is toasted. And he sort of show what advertising is that it's about positioning your brand. It's about showing your brand in a light that brings awareness to it. Some people use advertising to defend themselves, but it seems like for this specific account, he believes that it should be utilized to position yourself and to continue to reach out to individuals who smoke it regardless of what other mediums say, other publications say. It seems to me it's not about new customers. They're focused on those returning customers who loved Lucky Strike, just like the guy down the street or the clients here that has generations of people smoking it. And he talks about how advertising is about happiness and making you feel good. It should be a way of reaching into yourself and saying that everything's going to be okay. And the client is amused. He's intrigued. And he's kind of satisfied that this is where the messaging is going. This is what he wants in his messaging for his ads. He doesn't want negative outlook especially with the advertising that deals with doctors and trying to save the company. It's more about just continuing with making his product and selling it to people who want to buy it. And it seems to me that Don fixes the messaging problem. It was not a production problem, wasn't an ad budget problem, it was a messaging problem. And Don comes in and saves the day with his happy-go-lucky attitude at the end. Well, it wasn't happy-go-lucky. It was more confident. It's like bringing them to the finish line. And honestly, what I truly got from this scene is not that he was able to solve the problem with the FTC. I mean, not the FTC, with Lucky Strike. It was him saving an advertising account because the client didn't know what to utilize it for. He didn't understand how I can use advertising if we're going to talk about craziness. And he was able to show the client how to utilize advertising to help his business more and really help the agency continue to do work. I don't know for how long, but he knows he made it through another meeting with Lucky Strike on the payroll. Hello. That is impressive. We can't lie. And that is what the hustle grind is, especially, that's what I got from that meeting, that it was a make or break moment. Like I said, the client showing up to New York and he lives in North Carolina, baby, he wants to understand what's going on. It's such a win that people come in and they congratulate him. I could just tell that this account was huge for the agency. It's maybe one of their biggest accounts, and for Don to come up with another advertising pitch and continue to show that they can still advertise for this client. It's more work for the agency. But the day's not done yet. No, it's not. You would think after a long day of the long work day that he would just go home, and Roger looks at him in the face and be like, hey, you got to try to sort it out with Rachel Mencken, the clothing department that he kind of walked out of, the meeting that he walked out of, because they got some money on them too. They are bringing in they are willing to pay 3 million buckaroonies for the advertising. You're like, oh man, that's great for my pocket, but that's also great for the agency and advertising. We have to remember that advertising in this time and in marketing isn't, a requirement. It is a premium service that honestly enhances your marketing to the next level. And having businesses wanting to get involved in advertising is a good sign for the industry and for the company and the agency. And so I think he understands that. Roger leaves, and Pete and Don have a discussion. Don calls Pete out on his sly snake-like behavior. Man, Pete just didn't have a good episode. Oh man. And I kind of have to speed this up a little bit because my battery's about to die, guys. Once again, the battery's gonna die. All right, so we're gonna speed this up. He ends up having the meeting with Rachel, and it goes. It's interesting because, they're having a meeting, and Don talks about how how he's back and she knows what he's doing. It's sort of like in a very loud bar and they're talking and having drinks, and Don asks Rachel, has why isn't she married and why is she doing this business talk? Like, why is she in business, a businesswoman? Why don't you just become a, mother and a wife and, stay at home? And, she gets a little triggered by it, and she's trying to figure out, is there something wrong? And she said she loves business, and also because she's never been in love. And Don makes a very cynical remark to it, and he said that he actually he's one of the people that created love and the emotion through his advertising, and he becomes very cynical about it. And she looks at him in a different way. I think for her, she looks at him, and usually it was like, oh, just another white man. But in this sense, it's like, oh, he's competing within his white space too. Like, he's competing as a white man in his white space too. And that must be hard as well. And she kind of finds Don in a vulnerable space, and he's very seductive and he tries to seduce her, but throughout this whole interaction, she's very poised and professional, and she understands why he's here, and she feels as though that she gets a better understanding of who's working her campaign, and she also gets a better understanding what advertising is, just from the love factor. And it's like, oh, I might have fell for that too back in the day, the nylon commercial. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of cool to see them interact in an outside setting, and it's kind of cool in that way. So the meeting's over. She actually stops the meeting because she's the boss, and she's like, all right, I'm going, but you charm me and you get the account. So they win the account, and he's happy, and he doesn't understand how that happened, but he has a way of doing things. He was able to show that advertising. And that's pretty much the episode. That's pretty much it. I'm super excited that you all had a chance to listen to this review. It's a little long, but I hope that you all love the content of it. I really worked hard in just making sure that I took notes, and it's super exciting talking about advertising and marketing in this sense, in a truly inspired fictional story, and it's awesome. So thank you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe under this video, and let me know if you want to see more content like this, where I go through some advertising-esque video movies and films and TV shows. I really want to analyze and review Putney Swoop. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of it. Very satirical, very out of the way, and it was actually made during that time. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, thank you. Deuces.